Everyone thought he was an F-ranked adventurer, but he finds a golden servant card which summons an SS-ranked goddess who helps him become the strongest. Kai is a young man who decides to become an adventurer in hopes of earning gold and glory. However, luck is not on his side, as despite working tirelessly every day for the past 2 years, he is still stuck on the first floor of the dungeon. Just like any other day, Kai heads to the caves and begins creeping slowly towards a slime on the ground. But instead of reaching for a sword or knife, he pulls out an insecticide and sprays 2 bottles at the slime until it withers away and dies. He feels a surge of happiness at how adept he has become at killing slimes. It is expected, considering this is his 999th slime kill since he started working in these dungeons like an NPC. Determined to reach the 1000 slime mark, Kai ventures deeper into the dungeon. Suddenly, he notices a golden slime sitting on a pillar. Excited by his luck at finding such a rare spawn for his 1000th kill, he quickly realizes this one isn't going to be easy. As he attempts to spray it with his bottle, the slime simply jumps off the pillar. Undeterred, Kai grabs a new and more powerful spray gun filled with pesticide and shoots at the slime, successfully killing it. He celebrates his 1000th kill and eagerly opens up his stats to check his rank, only to realize his level remained the same even though he killed a golden slime. He decides to let it go, hoping to get some good loot at least. But instead of a normal monocore, he finds a small golden card with a girl drawn on it. At first it confuses him, but soon he realizes that this is a servant card, which is a very rare item. He checks the stats to realize that this servant is from the class of Valkyries and is named Sylph. He tries to hit her on Instagram, but finds out that there is no info about her online. He decides to get out of the dungeon first before researching anymore and starts heading back, while a group of adventurers walk past him with their amazing armor, which Kai can only look at with jealousy. He wonders whether he would ever be able to buy such a thing and heads over to the reception to get money in exchange for the slime cores. The receptionist, Hitsa, gives him 500 yen for each slime core, so 1500 yen in total, which is a disappointing amount. But Kai takes it and starts moving out. He suddenly stops and asks Hitsa whether she knows the value of a rare servant card, especially if the servant belongs to a divine class. Hitsa thinks for a while and claims that such a card would be very collectible and will be worth over 1 billion yen easily. He is shocked to hear that, but keeps his mouth shut as he returns back towards his locker, where he puts his stuff back before changing into everyday clothing and exits the area. It turns out that the dungeon is part of an amusement park, where people can get membership and go inside to explore and find valuable items. Several children walk around in costumes talking about how they want to be an explorer once they grow up. But Kai is completely lost in his thoughts, still thinking about the card. While waiting for the train, he ends up meeting with his 2 friends Shinji and Hayato, and they all get onto a train. Kai tells them that he is still stuck at level 3 and asks them why they don't explore any dungeons. Hayato replies that 2 years ago, when they newly went to explore the dungeons, they ended up hitting the 2nd floor, where they found a goblin. They thought it would be easy prey for them, but the goblin ended up beating the shit out of all of them alone. Ever since then, both Shinji and Hayato decided that dungeons are not for them, and they are happier exploring the other attractions with their passes. Later that night, Kai exits the train and starts walking back towards his home, where he has dinner with his family and takes a bath before heading off to sleep. The next morning, he still wonders whether he should sell the card or not, as 1 billion yen can get him all the armor he wants, and he can buy as many video games as he wants. His thoughts are broken by a voice which turns out to be his friend Katsu, who asks where he was last night. He decides to lie and claims that he was at a party with Shinji and Hayato, but to his dismay, both of them end up spotting Kai and walk over. Kai immediately takes them aside and begs them to not tell Katsu that he went dungeon crawling yesterday, and they agree, but when Katsu asks them what they did at the party, they ended up saying different things like crack, hookers, and bowling. Katsu realizes that they are lying and asks whether Kai went to the dungeons once again, but he manages to lie through his teeth and barely escapes. Later that day in school, he asks what his friends would have done with a servant card, and they immediately reply that they would have sold it, as it's worth a lot, and you can't summon a servant outside of the dungeons anyways. Kai thinks about whether he should sell the item, but when he goes to the dungeons that day, he decides to keep it for himself, as he wants to become one of the strongest adventurers that anyone has ever seen. He hides away from the camera and takes out the card before calling out Sylphie, the Valkyrie, to be her servant and follow her command. Suddenly, the card starts glowing and a bright light emits from it, which transforms into a huge woman with feathery wings on her back and basketballs in the front. She seems to be in an ethereal form as she grabs Kai and disappears immediately. Kai is confused at what's happening, when suddenly he turns around to see a small loli in armor standing beside him. He asks who she is, wondering if any kids got lost here, but the loli replies that she is the Valkyrie Sylphie who will be his servant from now. Immediately, all his hopes of becoming a strong adventurer shatter as he drops to the floor, regretting the fact that he didn't sell the card. He decides to pull his act together as he gets up and tells her that they need to hunt some slime. She immediately claims that she can sense some nearby, so Kai decides to test her intuition and tells her to lead him to the beast. Sylphie easily locates the slime, so Kai asks whether she can kill it for him, and she immediately agrees before going out in the open. Kai wasn't expecting much from such a small girl, but to his surprise, Sylphie conjures a lightning attack so devastating that for a moment Kai thought that the whole cave would collapse. Kai walks towards her, asking whether she is alright, but she starts blushing and claims that she is hungry and wants to eat something. Kai looks at her and remembers that the servants eat monocores, so he feeds the monocore of the slime to her, and she thanks him before claiming that there are some more slimes nearby. He asks whether she has regained her strength, to which she nods her head before heading off. But Kai stops her and asks whether she can only detect slimes. Sylphie immediately claims that she can detect all the monsters and not just slimes, but after every battle she feels hungry and needs to eat a monocore. Kai does the calculation and realizes that it will be useless this way as they won't earn anything out of hunting slimes. He comes up with a plan and tells Sylphie to track the slimes down for him, which she happily does, after which he uses his spray bottles to kill them one after the other. This seems to be the best way of operating, as finding slimes is a task in itself. But this way, he can save his time by directly heading towards the targets and neutralizing them with his cheap insecticide sprays. After killing a bunch of them, he ends up leveling up to level 4 and gains a new passive skill called the Slime Slayer, which gives him 50% increased stats when fighting against slimes. He seems disappointed with his new skill, but Sylphie raises his spirits by claiming that getting a skill is an achievement in itself. He looks at her and smiles, thanking her for the help, and claims that he will be returning home now as it's getting late. Sylphie looks at him and asks whether he will summon her soon again, and he promises to summon her as soon as possible, after which he recalls her back to her servant card. He starts heading back and stops at the reception to sell the manacores, which shocks Hitsu as she claims that he beat the daily slime extermination record by a large margin and asks how he do it. Kai lies and tells her that he just got lucky and takes his 1,500 yen reward before heading home. Later at night, he thinks about heading over to the second level of the dungeon, as even though goblins are scary, he believes that Sylphie is much stronger, and with her he can defeat them. That night, he dreams about a childhood memory where he sat in front of the TV with Katsu, while the reporter interviewed Katsu's dad, who was a famous adventurer. And that interview fills Kai with a feeling of amazement as he decides to follow in the same footsteps and become an adventurer himself. The next morning, he wakes up with a newfound conviction and confidence as he heads out to the second floor alongside Sylphie and the new sword and shield he bought with his money. He makes up his mind that he will keep clearing all the dungeons on his way to becoming the most famous adventurer in the world. They enter the cave and walk for a while when Sylphie realizes that something is wrong and asks Kai whether everything is okay, as he is looking very pale and is shaking really badly. Kai looks terrified of this cave, but lies to Sylphie that he is just very excited. But the moment Sylphie tells him that she can sense a goblin nearby, he immediately turns around and starts running. Sylphie is confused and asks what the hell is he doing, but Kai lies to her face, claiming that he has some urgent work back at home. He suddenly remembers Katsu's dad in the TV interview and stops, as he decides that he can't forget his dreams so easily, and grabs his wooden sword before telling Sylphie to lead the way. They soon find the goblin, sleeping behind a giant rock, but Kai is too scared to do anything, so he asks whether Sylphie could kill it. She immediately agrees and heads out to chant her spell as the goblin wakes up ready to fight, but they are interrupted by Kai, who jumps in between with his sword and tells Sylphie that he changed his mind, but tells her to be ready to help him. He rushes towards the goblin but misses his sword strike as the goblin backs off. This time the goblin attacks and tries to ram Kai to the ground, but he blocks the hit with his shield at the last moment. They struggle for a while, but Kai slowly gains ground and shoves the goblin away as it falls to the ground. Kai immediately tries to take advantage of that and rushes in with his sword, but even this time his sword strike is blocked by the goblin, who grabs it and disarms Kai before jumping at him to finish the job. Kai falls backwards without any defenses, but remembers that he still has the sprays, so he quickly takes them out and shoots the spray at the monster's eyes. The goblin gets blinded by it, which gives Kai the chance to land the final blow, but as he gets the sword and rushes towards the goblin, he ends up tripping over a rock and falls to the floor, and accidentally stabs him in the chest, killing the beast immediately. Sylphie seems very happy as he congratulates Kai, but he is still too scared as he grabs the mana crystal, glad to be alive. Suddenly, a golden glow emits from him, and he realizes that he has leveled up again. He checks the stats once again and finds out that he has gotten a new skill called the Goblin Slayer. He again has mixed feelings about such a shitty new skill, but decides that a skill is a skill and moves on. They go deeper in the cave where another goblin attacks them, but Sylphie uses her defensive barrier to block the attacks completely, while Kai times his sword slash perfectly to kill the monster. Kai then kills his third goblin by using the spray bottle once again to blind the monster before killing it, while Sylphie drags him once again to a new foe. Kai kills this goblin as well with a sword strike to the head, and in the process, ends up ranking up to level 6. They start walking once again, and Kai asks whether she knows anything about these dungeons, but Sylphie replies that she has no idea, and all she knows is that her sole purpose is to help her master. They move further inside where they find their final goblin of the day who attacks Kai, while Sylphie uses her lightning magic to destroy the beast. Kai feeds her the mana core before heading outside. He hands over the mana crystals to Hitsu. He again lies that it was simply a fluke and heads back home, where his body finally gets so sore that he is unable to move from his bed. The next morning, he drags his ass to walk to the school alongside Katsu, who immediately realizes that he must have gone to the dungeons, but he refuses and claims that he was just doing some bodybuilding in the gym, and that's why he is sore. Katsu decides to let it go and starts walking once again. After reaching their classroom, Kai ends up telling Shinji and Hayato about his new adventures into the level 2 dungeons, and also that he killed 4 goblins. They are surprised to hear it, and are having trouble believing that Kai is telling the truth. But he promises them that he is not lying and claims that he is going to go even deeper today. After school, he goes back to the dungeons alongside Sylphie and starts exploring the distant parts of the cave where they managed to kill goblins once again with beautiful teamwork, as Sylphie blocked the attacks while Kai landed the killing blow. And sometimes when Kai got too tired, Sylphie finished the monster with her lightning magic. After that expedition, he again slept like a log at night, and the next day upgraded to a metal rod, which did much more damage to the goblins. But because of exhaustion, he ended up sleeping even in the classroom. This didn't stop him from his adventures, however, as without fail he went into the dungeons, day after day, killing goblins with any means necessary, till he reached level 10, which was a big milestone for him. This time he gets a special skill called Divine Love, which boosted his stat growth at every level. The boost directly depended on the amount of love and care a divine goddess showed him, so he immediately decides to confess how happy he is to be able to go on adventures with someone as cool as Sylphie. The poor lowly doesn't understand how big of a psycho manipulator this guy is and happily thanks him for being with him, as she loves working alongside him. After that, the next monster they see turns out to be a glowing skeleton, which they have never faced before. Kai tells her to stay alert, and she immediately deploys her magic barrier as the skeletons rushed at them to attack. He crashes against the barrier and starts trying to break through, but before he could do that, Kai decides to attack. Unfortunately, his attack does nothing, as his weapons are too weak for this rare spawn, so he asks Sylphie to deal with it, who immediately chants her spell and shoots a lightning bolt at it, killing it at once. This time, the mana core that gets dropped turns out to be bright red in color. He wonders whether it could be rare, but decides to feed it to Sylphie anyway, who claims that it was more tasty than usual. Later that day, when he goes to Hitsu with a day's loot, he asks about the mana core dropped by the glowing skeleton, and she replies that it's a pretty rare drop and can easily fetch upwards of 2 million yen. Kai is devastated to hear that he could have been a millionaire, but Sylphie ended up eating his money. Hitsu tells him not to worry though, as if he encountered it once, there are good chances that he will meet it again. That night he wonders about the lost money, but decides that it doesn't matter as he still leveled up a bunch. This makes him wonder whether he can move on to the 3rd floor now. But he knows that on the 3rd floor, the enemies appear in groups and can be much more dangerous. Keeping this in mind, the next day he tells Sylphie that for a while he wants Sylphie to simply watch and not do anything else. She gets scared thinking that she did something wrong and apologizes. But Kai claims that he wants to go up to the 3rd floor, but he is scared that he will end up depending too much on her to save him. So he wants to get stronger first. Sylphie seems relieved to hear that and bids him good luck, when suddenly a goblin appears from behind a rock. Kai confidently tells Sylphie to watch from behind as he deals with it. But the plan backfires, and he ends up getting injured pretty badly, forcing him to buy potions from Hitsu, which blows away all his savings. That night he thinks about how he needs a lot of mana cores to feed Sylphie as well as better equipment, so he decides to go back to square one and enters the first floor once again to kill as many slimes as possible, gaining skills, levels, and mana cores. After several days of working his ass off in the dungeons alone, he finally is able to collect enough mana cores that he feels comfortable to move on to the third floor. Before they could leave the cave though, Sylphie claims that she can sense a different kind of slime, and her intuition seems on point as Kai notices a silver slime not far away. He immediately jumps into action and rushes the slime with his spray gun, but the slime is faster and dodges away. Thankfully, Sylphie was ready nearby and uses her lightning magic to hit the slime, immediately killing it. To their surprise, the slime ends up dropping another servant card, which is beyond lucky. Kai picks up the card to see that it is a demon rank card for a servant named Luz. He looks around to see Sylphie, who looked visibly upset to see the card, as he realizes that demons and goddesses must not go well together. But even after that, he decides to follow his own wishes, without even consulting with Sylphie, and summons the demon servant right there. A huge red flame envelops them completely, from which a huge demon lady emerges and flies straight through Kai in her ethereal form, just like what happened with Sylphie. He looks down once again and spots another lowly, but this time she has bat wings and horns on her head, realizing that now his party will be unstoppable with a demon and goddess on her side. If you liked this video, you will definitely love the story.